What's up, guys? It's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua. Did you think I would let my co-host Big Pete make all the commercials? Welcome to the New York Muscle Radio podcast. If you want to learn how to get bigger, stronger, and leaner while eating what you want, pick up your copy of Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code, now available in audiobook version, exclusively on NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. But for now, let's get back to the show.
New York's very own muscle building coaches, Anthony Bevilacqua and Pete Kacharian, proudly present to you New York Muscle Radio.
Who are these men over there?
Oh, they're just athletes training.
Athletes?
College guys, yeah. What do you mean? You think you could do better? What do you mean? These guys happen to be champions. Nobody can beat them. Hey, wait, where you going?
Over there.
What for?
To show them how to throw the discus.
Oh, no, you gotta stay here. You can't go butting in there.
They will not like me to instruct them.
No, it's just for college guys. No outsiders allowed.
I am Hercules.
I'm Hercules, and this is New York Muscle Radio, episode number 63, with your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, along with my co-host, Big Pete Athletes Kacharian. What's up, big guy?
We were just spending some time before this podcast listening to some great lines from, actually, I don't know if I should say the name because I wonder if anybody knows what movie that's from.
Well, yeah, actually, let's keep it going. So if you guys can figure out what movie that's from, we mentioned this in the past podcast when I was saying athletes. We wanted a quote or an email or whatever. You guys got to send us who said that and in what movie. So that was the actual clip.
Yeah, and
They would not like me to instruct them.
We'll stick to our words since we're playing this little game here. If anybody could actually, the first person who could guess what movie that is, we'll send them a free copy of Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code.
We'll send them the audiobook version of it. So you guys can, you'll be the first one to download the audiobook and you can hear the bonus section, which is maximizing your metabolism. So again, if any of you guys are interested in purchasing that, go to NewYorkMuscleRadio.com and click on the products tab and you'll see the audiobook there for Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code and the bonus section, maximizing your metabolism.
Yeah, so if you guys know what movie that is, send us an email at NewYorkMuscleRadio@gmail.com. First person who does that gets a free copy.
Athletes?
But everybody who listens to this podcast should have seen that movie. Actually, no, because I don't know what the age group is, to be honest with you. It's an older movie without giving it away.
Hey, but I was surprised when you said you saw it because I thought I was like the only person in the world who saw it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great movie, though.
I thought it was so bad that it was good.
Athletes?
And if anybody knows what movie it is, they can understand why I'm saying that.
Yeah, exactly. But they won't know. So let's change the topic before we actually give more away. And we're just giving away the podcast at this point. How's everything going with you, big guy?
Everything's going good, man. 2 weeks in on the diet right now. So coming off of that holiday season bulk and fluff mode, just dieting down, kind of getting back in shape a little bit, cleaning things up, going pretty smooth. Gonna take it as it comes. No set plan as far as how much I'm gonna push this diet, but again, I'm always learning every time I experiment. Again, this is just kind of an experiment, and I know exactly how to diet to get myself in shape, but since I'm taking a different approach, it's a learning experience. So experimenting more with higher fats, lower carbs, which is usually not what I do, but this off season was a little bit different, and I'm kind of bringing that along into the dieting phase too. So always experimenting, always evolving.
I actually have something I want to report. I believe it was back in, what episode was that? I got to look. Hold on. Let's look here. Episodes. I believe it was, yes, episode number 55 of New York Muscle Radio, where we spoke about maximizing your metabolism. That was actually the last time we made a change to my diet. And I've been pretty much the same weight since we made that change. And I actually think I'm getting a little leaner. So,
the way you respond, I would expect that, to be honest with you. Especially the way you train with an insane amount of volume, insane amount of heavy weights, and you're just religious with sticking to those numbers. So if you're not gaining, you're probably going to slowly start losing weight. You know,
Yeah,
you're not really going to maintain. You're going to slowly start burning.
I think that's what's actually starting to happen because I lost half a pound. No, I'm sorry, a pound the day before, and then it was half a pound yesterday. But then I had not yesterday, the day before that, and then I had eaten something. I ate Wendy's and some curly fries that like I had in the house, like I baked them, whatever. And I knew there was a lot more sodium than I'm used to there, so I was up like a half a pound or a pound. So, but I knew that was gonna happen based on the food. But I feel a little leaner, and I look a little leaner. I mean, I was flexing my arms for you before, big guy. And yes, we do this live on Skype. We flex to each other. But I don't know if you could tell in the Skype, but they look a little leaner, the arms, the guns.
Yeah, no, you're looking pretty lean, man, especially for how much food we got, you know, what you're feeding. Because everybody's a little bit different. I'm very sensitive to extra insulin floating around in my body. So, like, when my calories are pretty high and my carbs are high, I naturally get a little bit bloated. Not necessarily putting fat gain on, just holding a little more water, getting a little softer. But your calories are as high as mine were pretty much in the off season. Mine might have been slightly higher at the peak, and I was already kind of putting on a little bit of that bloat, and it seems to not be going on you. So
yeah, I don't know. I think I'm taking it slower. I mean, I definitely could have been a little more aggressive with it. And, you know, if I was aiming to diet when you were, I would have been a little more aggressive with it. But I'm not aiming to diet. I kind of want to stay this weight the whole year. So I'm kind of not in a rush to get fat quick. So I'm just kind of letting everything.
Necessary.
I'm maximizing my metabolism and just keep letting my body settle. And, you know, if I drop a little bit of points and get a little leaner, you know, all the more power to me. So then I could add calories in and, you know, hopefully stay leaner at this weight and gain some muscle at this weight. Because I feel good right now. I feel strong. And my calories are high enough where I don't feel like I'm depriving myself of anything. So I'm just going to keep rolling with that.
Yeah, I mean, the best advice for anybody who's in that transition phase where they're bulking and they don't want to get too heavy because they don't want to have to start dieting is honestly just keep it slow, because everybody wants to gain more weight. I'm guilty of this too. When I'm in my bulk, okay, you want to see the scale hit a certain number, you want to push it, you want to get past your last plateau. But, you know, going through repeated phases where you have to diet is just going to hinder you, especially if you're trying to make progress, getting bigger, getting stronger. Taking those steps back so often are going to hinder your progress long term. So the goal really is after you've been training for a while, after you've been putting on muscle, keep that fat gain to a minimum. You know, bulking is very good in the beginning of your career, but you know, after you kind of hit that advanced level, just keep the gaining phases pretty slow. You don't want to have to go through dieting phases after every time you put on a few pounds.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to, you know, move up a weight class, which is exactly what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to do it, you know, smart. I'm not trying to be stupid and just gain a whole bunch of weight. Because I'm moving up from the 83 kilo class to the 90, what is it, 93? 93?
I think so,
kilos,
yeah.
Whatever it is, 95, I don't know. I'm not from the kilo area, so I go by pounds. So it's like 183 is the cutoff on that weight class to 205, and I'm sitting right at 195, and that's kind of where my body sits normally, and I feel good at that weight. So, you know, I would like to get to the tipping point of the class, but I'm in no rush to do it. You know, I could get there and get really fat and be 210 and be fluffy big time, but if I got to ride this out for a whole year plus, I'm going to take my time, man. There's no rush. I feel good, and I'm breaking PRs in the gym, so that's all that matters.
Yep, just keep. That's exactly what I told you. You know, Anthony always reaches out to me, and you know, sometimes if he's deciding what he's going to do with his diet, you know, he'll kind of come to me for a little advice, second opinion, and it's exactly what I said. You know, if you're getting stronger and your weight is maintaining, you're staying relatively the same, but you're still progressing with your weights in the gym. You're feeling good. You're feeling strong. Don't push the excessive calories at this point, especially when they're already high. So, you know, he's doing the right thing. Anybody else who's in that position should follow around and do the same thing.
I hope I'm doing the right thing. You never know. I mean, I'm getting leaner, so, and like I said,
as long as you don't question yourself, you're doing the right thing, man.
That's very true.
Start questioning yourself, then you're not gonna know what the hell's going on.
I'm curious what would happen though if I did like a 2-week mini cut, just like kind of lose like some fluff and then go right back into it. I think I would look great actually.
Yeah, you'd probably look good, but I don't think it would have any type of benefit to your training. You know what I mean? It might even set you back slightly. I mean, probably 2 weeks is not going to set you back, but you know, you got to think when you're building momentum and you're kind of on a roll, which you are right now. You don't want to put any stop to that. You don't even want to slow it down a little bit. You know, so just keep things rolling along. You know,
that's a great point.
That's the biggest thing. I think that consistency plays its biggest role in the off season with just the amount of momentum you're building. You know, if you're on a roll, just keep milking it. You know, don't put any stop to it because a lot of times it takes a while to start building that momentum.
That's a good point because that happened to me actually when I got to my heaviest. I was 217, and I was making great strides in the gym, great gains, and I just couldn't take being that weight anymore. I kind of rushed it though, and I couldn't take being that weight anymore, and I was like, I gotta diet. And I jumped right off the bandwagon and started dieting. So, you know, go figure. I think Pete's 100% right when he says that because if I would have milked that, I think I would have been a little bit farther out than where I was.
Yeah, we're all
I stopped
guilty
and
of
I
it.
was stupid, but yeah, we're all guilty of it.
Yeah, I may have just done it to myself by dieting.
Yeah, you probably did.
Yeah, so.
Oh, big guy. I don't know what we're gonna do, but we have to figure out. We should write down all the stuff that we're planning on coming up with this year because I always feel like we always have these random things. Like right now, it's the higher fat approach. It's kind of what we're testing out and seeing, and you know, we have a couple other things that we should write down and kind of get out there. Maybe we could kind of find a new way to change things for everyone. You know, I think like dieting phases are definitely too long now, so we should definitely go with like a shorter dieting phase and see how that works out for some people. But I think this is how people change the industry. You know, you get one person that does really, really good on it, and then someone else says, oh, you know what, that sounds like a good idea, and they jump on and do the same thing. So
Yeah.
maybe we could be a trendsetter.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things I'd like to change as far as, you know, what's kind of considered the standard. You know, long dieting phases, I think they have their place, and I think at this point they could be slightly overused and over-exaggerated, you know. Being in a caloric deficit for over 20 weeks, 30 weeks, crazy stuff like that, which people are doing, not something I really recommend, but at the same time, I don't necessarily recommend for most people in most situations to go from off-season to contest shape in only 8 weeks, which is what, you know, used to be the norm. So it all depends on the situation. But again, you can make anything work if you go about it the right way. You know, I could probably get Anthony in contest shape in eight weeks, no problem. I could also get him there in 30 weeks. Just a different method is going to lead to a little bit of a different result and different time frame. So
I'd probably lose all the gains I'm making as far as strength goes.
you know what's funny? I mean, I think you're right. You would lose a significant amount of strength if we had to force you down into contest shape in 8 weeks.
I wonder. I'm just curious.
But I don't think it would be as significant as you actually would think. And I think it would more so be a lack of energy causing it rather than you thinking that you just lost all your muscle, lost all your progress.
Very true.
So, I mean, I've never done an extreme diet for that short period of time. I've done contest diets, gotten from like 20, 25, 30 pounds of contest shape in like 11 weeks, but not like 8.
I mean, it's a good idea because I know for me, an extended diet like that, it's not enjoyable. I mean, I know dieting is not supposed to be like enjoyable. It's not supposed to be fun, but it's just so long. It's like enough already. I hate that. That's the one thing I hate about dieting. It's like you get to that point and you're like, oh man, enough. I'm just done with this.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There's two sides of the fence and there's pros and cons to both of them. If you look at it from a standpoint of long versus short, and longer being more beneficial because you're going to diet much slower and it's not going to be as of an intense process.
Yeah, but no, that's bullshit because no matter what, you're still dieting.
Yes. No, I agree 100%. And there's less chance of, let's say, muscle loss if you do it the slow, steady approach. But then again, if you take the other route and you do more extreme approach, you're going to be in a higher caloric deficit, but you're only going to be in it for a very short period of time. You know, if you're only in a caloric deficit for 8 weeks versus 20, 30 weeks, there's definitely different pros and cons. So if you're in it for a short period of time, more aggressive, in theory, it's possible to lose less muscle or, you know, preserve the same amount of muscle because you're only in a caloric deficit for a short period of time. So you can lose muscle and you can slow down your metabolism and lose muscle from being in a deficit for such a long, drawn-out period of time. So it's pros and cons of both ways, you know?
Yeah, we're going to have to test it on you and try and find out.
Yeah, this will be a new goal for 2016. We're going to
I think we'd have
contest
to do
shape. And
since you started like semi-dieting already, I think we'd have to have you jump back on bulking for at least another 2
I
to
wouldn't
3
do
weeks.
I wouldn't
and then,
do it right now.
Yeah, go from there. Where would you start your calories at, man? So if you were bulking at like whatever, 3,700, 3,800, right?
Yeah, I would probably honestly just cut them right in half if I was going to be aggressive with it. Yeah, I would just cut them right in half.
Wow, I'm excited, man. I'm curious.
Well, from a metabolic standpoint, if you're consuming that many calories for a long period of time, like in your bulk, your metabolism is going to be running so fast that if you just cut them right in half, your metabolism is still going to be running that fast. There's a little bit of lag period. People always get concerned. Okay, if you cut too many calories, your metabolism is going to slow down. But there's a lag period. So let's say your body's burning 3,700 calories a day, and then you cut them in half. It's still going to be burning about that much or at that rate to support that amount of caloric intake for at least a few weeks or so before it starts to slow down. It doesn't just stop the next day. So you'll see a huge drop off in weight initially. Then, yeah, your body's going to adjust, but then you have to adjust the diet, adjust the cardio accordingly to compensate for that.
Man, I actually think that would work because then, you know what, we believe in reverse dieting, so it doesn't kind of matter what happens to your body during that time as far as your metabolism goes because we'll just repair right after that. You spend 8 weeks dieting, but we could spend, 16 weeks reverse dieting you, and you'll still be in a better spot than if you just dieted for 8 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
dieted for 30 weeks, whatever.
In my opinion, you'd probably be better off doing an 8-week dieting phase and then following it up with a 16-week reverse diet than to do a 16-week diet and follow it up with a 16-week reverse diet.
Guys, this is what our phone conversations are. Like, in all honesty, this is what I call Pete on the phone. Hey, big guy, what's up? Nothing much, I'm dieting. Oh, you know what we should do? This is exactly what happens when we call each other. Like, this is our conversations.
Pretty much.
We eat shit and breathe bodybuilding, so, this is our life. We're always testing the limits of something, so, if you guys want to try that, give it a try, let us know, but we're definitely going to use Pete for that approach and see if we can get him in contest shape in 8 weeks. I think it'd be good. I think it'd be a good little twist to the podcast.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool experiment, and I'm definitely up for testing it out. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't mind going on a severe caloric deficit because I always tell you this. Hunger doesn't really bother me as far as dieting. Never have a problem with that. A lot of people always don't want to go on a diet because of hunger. Hunger never seems to bother me. I could deal with it. Stress of contest dieting for a long period of time is just what gets to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people could relate to that, actually.
That's what bothers me the most about contest prep. If I had to pick one thing, it's being under a lot of stress for a long period of time. So I can handle hunger. I can handle being tired. That doesn't bother me.
All right, guys. Well, today's episode is a cool one. We're going to talk about the bodybuilding foundation. So, your legs are your foundation for your body. These are the grassroots of where bodybuilding started for me and Pete, and where it starts for many people nowadays. Because like I keep saying, a beginner in 2016 is someone way different spot than when I was a beginner in 2001. So we'll be right back. We're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll be right back with today's episode.
What's up, New York Muscle Radio listeners? It's your co-host, Big Pete Kacharian, and I'm glad you're all listening. Put down the tilapia and asparagus. Learn how to get bigger, stronger, and leaner eating what you want. Pick up a copy of Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com.
Hey guys, it's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, and I just wanted to announce that my brand new personal training facility is now open. I'm currently taking on new clients in the Long Island, New York area. If you're interested in working with the best personal trainer in the business, head on over to abfitnesstrainer.com and sign up for your free consultation. Then you can understand why bodybuilding.com has named me Personal Trainer of the Month.
At A+ Meals, we specialize in healthy yet gourmet meal prep. With over a combined 15 years in the fitness industry and over 30 years in food service, A+ Meals is a premier choice when searching for your next healthy meal. Being started by 2 nutritionists, these meals are designed to help you reach any goal on your fitness journey. We now offer a wide variety of meals on our menu, as well as snacks and desserts. Order now by visiting our website, aplusmeals.com.
All right, guys, we're back. New York Muscle Radio, episode number 63. It's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua. I got my co-host, Big Pete Kacharian here, and we got on the line here AJ Morris. AJ's joining us all the way from the UK, a hop, skip, and a jump away. What's up,
guys?
What time is it your time?
So it's 2 a.m. over here, so just got up from a brief nap, and I'm ready to go.
Naps. We don't take naps here in New York Muscle Radio podcast. No naps, buddy. All right, so we're gonna jump right into this today. Today's episode is gonna be a cool one. We're talking a little bit about the foundations of bodybuilding. Whenever you do anything, you have to make sure you lay down a strong foundation. So bodybuilding is just the same, and things have changed a lot since me and Pete had started. I remember being a teen; things were totally different than what they are now. So that's why we got AJ on the line here. He's gonna jump in with us, and he's gonna kind of give his viewpoint on what it's like to kind of be a teen nowadays, and where bodybuilding is for him versus where it is for us and where we started. Right, big guy? Oh, you're still a teen. What, are you sleeping over there?
No, I'm here, man. I was just thinking about it because it's really cool because bodybuilding has changed so much since we first started training. And when we were teenagers, we definitely didn't have the resources that are out there today. It makes it sound like we're so much older.
Podcast, man. Podcasts weren't around when we were there.
Oh no, exactly. We couldn't just turn on a podcast and get bodybuilding information for an hour every day. We had to search, read articles, talk to people, and the stuff that was available definitely wasn't even optimal. The stuff that we thought was the best way to go about things were, it was kind of like the slow route to take today. So, things have changed significantly. And for AJ, because he's younger now, he's in his teens now with all this information out there, he's definitely going to probably make more improvements faster than when we started just because of the amount of information that's out there and he's applying the correct stuff. So it's really cool because what we started with was definitely not what's recommended today.
AJ, how did you find us, just out of curiosity?
Okay, so I think I found you on iTunes. Basically, I was listening to a lot of podcasts when I was doing cardio during prep. I tend to go for walks and stuff like that, so I just listened to podcasts. I think I searched bodybuilding on iTunes and brought you guys up.
See how easy that is, man? You know what we had to do?
Yeah, for you it was easy, man. I don't even want to tell you what the process is like to actually get your information out there.
I don't remember, was it just strictly magazines? Remember when I started, it was just the magazines. We used to have to wait every month.
It was magazines, and then you had something like bodybuilding.com would have authors publish articles every so often. But the funny thing is, wait for those. Yeah, but the funny thing is, basically anybody can write for bodybuilding.com back then. There was really no criteria for that, and you would take everything that was said on that website thinking that they were authorities, when in reality it was really just anybody writing an article. So you didn't know if it was good information, if it was bad. You really had to read it and then say, okay, I should apply this and see if it works or not. It wasn't like there was a science-based thing where it said, new study shows that you don't have to eat breakfast. You won't lose muscle if you skip breakfast by an hour or two. We weren't sure. We were afraid that if we accidentally skip breakfast, we might lose muscle. And that was the norm, believe it or not.
Yep. All right, so let's get this thing rolling. So what type of changes do you think you need to make from just working out to becoming a competitive bodybuilder, whether as a teen or as a beginner? So what has to start to happen to go from just working out to becoming a competitive bodybuilder? What do you think, Pete?
Well, for me, I can speak from experience. When I first started training, I was about 14. I was when I started getting serious about working out. When I turned, within a year, I already started wanted to be a bodybuilder, compete. By 15, I knew I wanted to compete. I did my first show when I was 19. But in the beginning, I was kind of just like everybody else. I just wanted to lose weight, just wanted to build some muscle. I was a teenager, I just wanted to look good. So the amount of effort I put into it was maybe 75% out of 100. And, the focus was just, okay, if I do curls, if I eat better, if I do some cardio, I'll look better, and then when I started wanting to be a bodybuilder, there was almost like a switch kind of just went off, and I knew, okay, if I wanted to be a bodybuilder, the transition is not to making training and nutrition part of my life. It was, now it was a lifestyle. So everything I did had to fit into that. So, my training routine had to be set up so that it could work with my lifestyle, so that I could go to the gym 5 days a week or whatever it was and fit it in. My nutrition had to be a part of my lifestyle too. It's not something that I did one meal a day. Okay, I make sure I have my protein shake. It was, okay, the whole day's diet had to fit into that. So it became a priority over things that were less important. And, again, it was just, you had to adopt kind of that lifestyle. So transitioning was just something that I did casually to something that became a lifestyle for me. So it's more of a mental thing, to be honest with you. But with the mental thing, it became everything else.
See, for me, it was something a little different because I knew I wanted to start competing right away, but I just always felt like, well, I don't have the mass that I need to compete yet, so I'm just going to keep training and keep training and keep training. So I actually didn't start competing until I was 21. So I had actually just missed the juniors category, which sucks completely. So that's kind of how it went for me. You know, I didn't feel ready until I was that age. But since AJ's around that age now, he's actually 19 years old. So AJ, tell us a little bit about how you went from just plain working out to becoming a competitive bodybuilder. Man, I wish I started competing at 18, 19.
I think honestly, it's about what Pete said in terms of making it a priority. You've got to really think about how much you're going to benefit from competing, and it's going to take you from initially, okay, I've had a good week of working out, okay, maybe I'll relax on the weekend type thing. That is most people, is they'll have a good week, and then they'll lax for another week. And it's things like that. It's just making those weeks roll into one and being consistent just throughout. I think consistency is key, both in a gaining phase and a fat loss phase for a prep. I think you've just really got to, once you get that consistency, I think you're ready to go towards competing on stage.
So for you, that's exactly what it was. It was just like, okay, I'm having a good half month, 6 months of working out, so I think I'm going to compete now. Is that kind of how it worked? Like, what made you decide to get into the competitive part of it?
I mean, I had a competitive drive from a very young age, and I've always competed in some form of sport every single year since I was about 12 years old. So when I got into lifting, I was looking around, okay, how can I make this a competitive sport? I didn't want to be someone that just went to the gym and lifted weights. I wanted to be someone that, lifted weights for a real purpose. So finding my purpose was through bodybuilding, and through the BMBF was my initial sort of first competition. And I think, it was just finding my purpose really for the gym, and to be consistent.
I think also too, it was a little different between Pete. How old were you when you first competed again?
I was 19.
All right, so you were his age. But
I was just about to turn 21. It was like a week before my 20. I'm sorry, just about to turn 20. A week before my 20th birthday. Just made the teen cutoff.
I think for us, it wasn't as known as it is now. Now you can scroll on Instagram and you could see it. So I think that's where the difference is, between us and him as far as that goes. Because you could scroll through Instagram and you see other teens his age competing, and he's like, oh, I could, if these guys could fucking do it, I could do it.
Yeah, there's people now that if they see it on Instagram, they people who don't even work out, just they know people who compete. It's just like a normal thing. Like when I did my first show at 19, and people that I went to high school with contacted me like, oh, you're a bodybuilder now? Like it was like this weird thing. Even it's not that long ago, but just to be a competitive bodybuilder back then, it was like, wow. Like I don't know bodybuilders,
So right now in 2016, as a beginner, what are the common resources and methodologies for young bodybuilders? So I guess where do they get their information from? AJ, where do you get your information from? So you're looking up, you want to get leaner. Where do you go to look?
Mm-hmm. I think honestly, the first sort of guy that I maybe bumped into was, as you'll all know, probably Matt Ogus from
wow,
YouTube.
That's funny. That's pretty cool that he. I'm sorry to cut you off. It's just really cool that that's the name that he drops out of everybody. Interesting.
Yeah, that is. That's
not a bad thing. Just interesting how things have changed. Because nobody would have said Matt Ogus when we first started working out.
No, I highly doubt it. I mean, it's probably really recent that he just sort of stepped up to a level where he's so accessible. I think if you ask people now in the gym who's Matt Ogus, they'll probably know. Mm-hmm. So I think Matt Ogus was the first sort of one that I watched. Alongside
he was kind of young too, I think, when he started, right?
Oh yeah. He was. I think he was maybe in his teens when he did his first show, but I don't think he did very well. But obviously when he sort of hooked up with 3DMJ, that was when he started doing sort of better. So I think what I learned from Matt was the general concept of sort of flexible dieting, and that sort of approach. And I think following his contest prep was very, very motivating for me, in the fact that I thought, okay, well, if someone can do that and go through that process, that's something that I'd like to do. I sort of fell in love with the idea of the process. And then from Matt, I think I was following 3DMJ, not so closely in my first year, but extremely closely in my second. And I actually, I called out to like all the guys at 3DMJ, and I was just like, without your videos, I don't think I would have been able to get into the condition that I did, because they've just, taken things to a new level with regards to offering so much free advice for the natural bodybuilding world that, you can literally search, a certain topic and they'll have like a half an hour video on it. So I think that was how I gained most of my knowledge, was YouTube. And I'd literally sit for, a long time trawling through YouTube videos, and making notes, and stuff like that. So I think YouTube has been the biggest sort of content storage for me.
Yeah, see, Pete, when we started, we had the forums, and guys used to put their journals on there, and they used to write out their workouts and what they used to do, and that was how me and you learned. I know that. And I think it's something totally different to be said from a video, rather than reading stuff. And we mentioned this before in the podcast. This is why we did a podcast, because we feel like we absorb this information, a lot better hearing it and, seeing it than like in a YouTube video. So I think that's why a lot of these guys, even beginners nowadays, I think it's a little easier for them because they could just watch a video and actually see what the guy's going through, and something totally different than reading it on the screen.
Yeah, man, it's funny because if you wanted to see something, if you were on the bodybuilding.com forums and you're following some guy's log, occasionally he might post like a 13-second clip from his cell phone with really bad quality, and you couldn't even see what the hell was going on. You just know, okay, today I squatted 405 for 10 reps. It might have been something crazy like that. And you could see he's squatting 4 plates for 10 reps, but you really can't see what's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you could barely see, like, everything is squared.
Yeah. It's funny.
Pixelated.
Funny how things have changed. But, I mean, as far as, YouTube and everything like that, it's crazy because it's good and it's bad because there's so much information that you could definitely get information overload with contradicting information. But if you're looking for an answer to something, you can find the answer just by typing it in. If we had to find an answer to something, like if we had something specific to ask,
we had to ask.
You had to ask and hope somebody would respond, and it would take sometimes days. You could type it in right now, whatever question it is on YouTube, and say, how much protein do I need for today? And you can watch a full video, and someone will tell you exactly how many grams of protein you need to eat.
Yeah, it's so different. So definitely a different way. Like I said this in another podcast, I wish I was starting in 2016.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a hell of a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. All right, so what are some common mistakes you see as a beginner starting out? So, Pete, what do you think? As a beginner starting out, what do you see? Big mistake.
Well, that's an interesting question because I'll talk about mistakes that I made. Because a lot of people make the mistake, I guess, of not emphasizing what's most important and emphasizing all the little details. We've kind of talked about this in a lot of different podcasts. And for us, when we first started training, the diet information was completely different than it is now. I think anybody who kind of gets into bodybuilding now, the first thing they understand is, okay, flexible dieting has a major role in body composition. It's something that could be utilized. There's really no reason not to use it unless for some reason you don't want to. But things that were emphasized when we first started training was stuff like nutrient timing, protein every 3 hours, not skipping breakfast, stuff like that. And I think that, the mistakes we made was focusing, or at least I made, was focusing on all these little details that didn't matter. And that kind of held us back because you have to focus on the big picture if you want to make the most amount of progress in the shortest period of time. So we weren't even focusing on, when I first started training, I didn't focus on total calories. I didn't focus on macronutrients. It was more of, okay, make sure you're eating protein before your workout, after your workout, and you're eating every 3 hours and not skipping breakfast. And that was the most important stuff. When if you look at the evidence and the results people are getting now, you know that you could actually not do any of that stuff and make equally as good progress or better progress, provided your total calories, your macros are on point. So I think, for me, the big mistake was focusing on all the stuff that didn't matter as much. And I think the information out now shows that those aren't the most important factors. And I think that puts people in the right direction.
See, I think that with the beginners, I think that the most common mistake they make is not taking all the information that they're looking through on whether it's YouTube or bodybuilding.com or whatever, and they're not applying that information and thinking maybe that they're above all that. And I think I did that a little bit in the beginning too. oh, okay, this guy says eat protein, so I'm just going to eat as much of it as I can, not applying exactly what I was reading to what was going on. So I think that that's a common mistake that beginners make. When we started, Pete, when AJ started, and when people who are actually listening to this who are starting maybe today, that's what they're going to make. That's the mistake they're going to make. So overcome that by actually applying what you're seeing.
Yeah, and
you, AJ, what do you think?
I think going on similar lines as Pete in terms of people think that they immediately want something now. So what do people generally want when they start training? They want to be as big as possible. So they look towards the guys that are already big and giant and huge. So they look towards, I looked towards Kai Green. So I watched Kai Green's videos and I looked at Kai Green's diet, the way Kai Green trained. What people don't take into account is that Kai Green has not been training like that from the age of 18. Mm-hmm. Kai Green has probably been training in a very simple format, with probably a slightly more simple diet approach, and building that muscle over time. He's not gone from, not working out to jumping in the gym and doing, 2 hours on legs, with extremely high volume. So I think people skip to the conclusion that, okay, well, if I'm going to look like the biggest guy, I have to do the exact same as the biggest guys. It's not the case.
I agree with that, and like you said, especially as a beginner, you could always get away with a lot more for less. You could always get away with doing a lot less and still making progress. And I think if you jump into a beginner an advanced routine, you're going to miss out on those beginner gains that you could actually make, doing less. And I think that's very, very important, because when you become advanced, how much more could you add on? You're starting with Kai Green's workout now. And
where do you go from there?
Exactly.
You're stuck.
Then you're just doing one of my routines, right, Pete?
Oh man, yeah, I know. Kai Green should start taking on I think he's gonna go to your level next.
So, all right. So let's see. How do you know when to begin competing? So how did you know it was the right time to begin competing for yourself, AJ? Like, how did you know, okay, I'm ready now? Like, now I'm dieting down. Like, this is where I have to be.
In all honesty, I probably didn't. I think I just really wanted to compete. I took into context that I'd been training for maybe, I think, a year and a half or something like that. But I knew that I'd seen guys compete in the federation that I wanted to compete in, and I'd seen their sort of physiques, and I thought, okay, well, surely if I look like this now, I'll probably look better than them when I diet down. And it's a big shock. I think I lost 40 pounds in my first prep. So I actually went through quite an aggressive fat loss phase as well as getting ready for a show. So I actually went from sort of like 185 pounds to about 145 in a fairly short time period. So I think I was looking around at other teenagers and realizing that maybe I had a good amount of muscle and good structure, and I went from there.
You want to jump in there, big guy? You look like you want to say something.
No, I was just thinking about it because I kind of had a similar experience. When I first started training, I mean, when I transitioned into wanting to be a bodybuilder, I knew I was going to compete one day. I didn't know when it was originally. I was maybe like 15, 16, and I said, okay, I'm going to focus on being the best I can so that when I do compete, I'm ahead of everybody. I figured, all right, I'm 15, 16. Not many people who are competitive bodybuilders are taking it seriously at this age. So when I get to be 18, 19, I'm going to have, a head start on everybody. And, I started going to shows, just checking out natural bodybuilding contests, stuff like that around 16, 17. And I saw what the competition looked like, and I kind of knew, okay, this is the standard. I have to be able to beat this. And by the time I was about 18, I said to myself, all right, I'm a little bit ahead of the curve here. I could definitely compete and beat some of these guys. At the time, I really had no experience with dieting, getting in contest shape. When you just diet to be an off-season bodybuilder, you think that contest prep is completely different than what it really is, when you start dieting. So talking about what we spoke about earlier in the other podcast, the 12-week diet was kind of the norm back then. So I think I actually dieted like 11 weeks for my contest because I decided last minute. I said, I could do an 11-week contest prep. And, I went into that contest prep and I had probably the most muscle out of any teen in that division. But I came in maybe like 10 pounds over contest weight. You know, and I thought I was going to be shredded. I had no idea what I was actually going to look like. And, you know, I had probably had the best intentions I could have had at that time, but it taught me a lot about getting in contest shape. It's a totally different animal, you know?
Yeah, I think when you should begin trying to compete, especially if you're a teen, you know, I would say you need at least a year and a half to 2 years under your belt of, you know, good, hard mass gaining, you know, really trying to build up some size. Because otherwise you're just going to diet down. You're going to be nothing. You're going to be, you know, pretty much skin and bones because you don't have much to build, especially if you're, you know, a skinny guy, an ectomorph type of a body, you know, trying to build yourself up and compete. So I think you need, you know, a 2-year approach of hardcore mass gaining. And that was why for me it took me a long time because I was really skinny growing up, and I said, you know, if I want to compete, I definitely need to put on more mass. So I'm gonna wait. And again, you know, then you get to the point where you're like, it's never enough. You know, okay, I need to be bigger. I need to be bigger. I need to be bigger. So I think after 2 years of a hardcore bulk, I think then you could start really dieting down and competing. But once you get rid of that initial phase of like putting on muscle, I think, you know, any time is a good time, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget about that, honestly. I mean, it seems like the trend now that people follow people online, see them competing, and they don't even work out yet, and they have intentions, okay, I want to compete. So they don't go through an initial phase where they put on muscle. You know, they just start working out and trying to do two things at once, okay? They're trying to get ready to compete and put on muscle, you know, and it's just like, especially in the beginning when you're going to make all that progress in a very short period of time, like just focus on bulking, building some muscle, you know, then worry about competing. But people jump right into it trying to compete.
AJ, for you now, so like, you know, when did you decide this was all going to be for you? Like, I'm curious how this played out in your mind. Like, did you see Matt August first and say, okay, I'm going to compete and do that one day? But did you like gain weight first? Like, how did it work out for you?
Okay, so I think I basically used to compete in motorsport, and I used to race karts at a pretty high level, similar level to the level I compete at now in natural bodybuilding. And I left that and going into the gym more frequently, and I needed something. I needed something to replace that. So essentially, I looked at possibility for shows within maybe, I think, a year of hard training, but I put on a serious amount of weight, which is something that I was going to talk about when you said a 2-year mass gaining phase. I think this is a general great idea for a young athlete. I think they tend to think or try to stay too lean. That big jump in weight or quite an aggressive gaining phase is really important, in my opinion. If you want to compete relatively soon, I think you've got to try and pack on, you know, a good amount of weight, a good amount of size that your strength's going shooting up, rather than taking the sort of the slower approach, which might be better for a more advanced bodybuilder. So I gained really fast. I went up to my highest body weight, I think probably 30 pounds heavier than I am currently. And then I dieted down from there. But if you're asking me whether, you know, that phase was effective or not, I think I wouldn't have had it any other way. I don't think I would have been able to compete at the level or with the muscle that I had if I hadn't have gone through that sort of quite initial, quite fast gaining phase.
Yeah, I mean, I agree too. Plus, you know, you need to be able to maximize your metabolism, and this is similar to what we talk about in the Maximizing Your Metabolism audiobook that we have on NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. You know, that's part of the flexible dieting, cracking the flexible dieting audiobook. It's a bonus section that we added on. But if you have no calories to build off of, you're going to diet with nothing, and you're going to have a hard contest, your first contest. So that first mass gaining phase is going to build up your metabolism to be able to start handling calories like that. So when you actually comes time to diet, you have something to diet from. Come on, big guy. I know you want to jump in on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more about that because I'd say that first, like everybody has a first bulk that they go on, and you could never duplicate that first bulk. So you better make it count. You know, when you first start training and you're going to be milking all those newbie gains, and you combine that with a very high calorie diet, you're just setting yourself up. That's your foundation for everything. You know, you're going to be building the most amount of muscle that you're going to ever build in the shortest period of time. And, you know, how effective you make that is going to reflect your next bulking phases in your contest prep, because when you initially take something like a 2-year period just to build muscle, and you spend all that time building up your metabolism, building that muscle, adding that weight, every time you go back to that, you're going to do it at a much slower rate. You know, you're not going to go back on a 30-pound bulk and expect to gain that amount of muscle. You're just going to be putting on tons of fat. So, you know, having that foundation is just going to be crucial. I mean, I did it. I probably, if I had to go back, I probably would have been more aggressive with it. I never, you know, I didn't gain 30 or 40 pounds my first bulk. I'd like to say I think I gained about 25 or so. I definitely could have took it a lot further though. And I think people who make the most progress in the beginning do have the very serious bulk. And I think it's definitely a staple for anybody who's just starting out, especially if you're skinny. Go on that bulking phase for a good 2 years. Just eat, train, make sure your calories are high, and you're going to put on a lot of muscle.
See, for a beginner now, you have us to tell you this, but when I started, I didn't do that. I didn't have my big bulk until later on in my bodybuilding career. It wasn't until later on that after I competed that I went on that big bulk. But, you know, it's definitely necessary, and I still feel gains from it. I can only imagine what it's like to do that in the beginning. It's got to be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, those newbie gains, you know, you're never going to get them back. You know, you always try and get them back, but it's never going to be like you first started picking up weights.
Exactly. All right. So what type of training do you think is optimal for a beginner or a teen, someone starting out? Pete, what do you think?
This is a really good question because I feel like there's not a correct answer for this one, because I'll tell you from my experience, you know, when I first started training, it was, you know, I mean, it's still today that the norm is for magazines and pro bodybuilders and stuff like that to train the typical one body part a week split, you know, chest on Monday, back on Tuesday, etc., all that. And that's pretty much how I trained in the beginning. And I actually made great results doing that. And I don't think that that's a bad place for a beginner to start, even though now everybody's always jumping on the bandwagon. Okay, forget that. Do rip toes, 5 sets of 5, strong lifts, or whatever it is, and just focus on bench, squat, deadlift, it's not a bad place to start. But to be honest with you, I think in the beginning, your body can respond to almost anything because it's not used to doing anything. That, you know, keeping it simple but focusing on what you want to do to improve on is something that you should do. So the easiest way to do that is to just do a regular body part split. And if you can grow on that, I mean, if you could grow on that at the advanced level, that's probably actually a more beneficial way to train than getting so advanced with it. You know, if you can grow just training chest once a week on Monday and putting everything you have into it, then I would suggest doing that. You know, so at the newbie stage, if you can do that, that's what I recommend. You know, I made great results doing that. Anybody who starts doing that usually does. The problem is, after about a year or so, you're going to stall out on that. So you have to evolve from that over time. So I never did that whole very simple 5 sets of 5 full body routines or upper lower or anything like that. I did the regular body part split. And that's honestly where I'd probably start most people at. Maybe I would introduce them to a little bit of a higher frequency, but it would pretty much just be that basic bodybuilder split. I really think for beginners, that's perfect.
What about you, AJ? I'm curious, where did you start?
Very, very similar to Pete, actually.
So I was going to say, did your approach change? So go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So very similar to Pete in the way that I started. I was on the, you know, one body part a day split, training everything once a week. I didn't know about really sort of optimal training frequency or anything like that. But I think the general idea that any sort of listener should take away from this is wherever you start training, don't think about it too much. Just get yourself in the gym, as you say, get your calories nice and high, but make sure whatever you are doing, you are going to the gym with that passion and enjoying your session. That should be the priority. Forget optimal, forget upper lower, 5-3-1, whatever. Just go and enjoy yourself, because that's going to be sustainable over the long term. You're going to want to improve and keep going back. So I think enjoying yourself is going to be the priority. Alongside that, it's going to be remembering, if you're in your first or second year of lifting, you've got to realize that at this point it's probably not a good idea to focus on weak point training or anything like that. I think that's a lot of people say. They look at their physique, okay, well, my arms are a weak point, my delts are a weak point. You probably, until you get very lean or you know, you've got a good amount of development, I don't think it's a good idea to assess weak points. just go and train and make sure you're hitting at least, once a week per body part. I think that's a good idea. And then in the future, you can look towards the quote-unquote optimal training split. So to answer your question, Anthony, in terms of how I changed it, so I went from a once a body part a week thing onto a push-pull legs. That was quite soon after. Maybe a year into my training, I went to sort of a push-pull legs variation. And then from that, my first contest prep was actually done all on a 4-day-a-week upper-lower split. And that's how I did my first sort of prep.
I think that for a beginner, I think the best type of training is, I would say something like a starting strength. I think that that's going to be more optimal than a one-time-a-week body part routine, only because, it's important to use and focus on those main movements and learning progression right from the beginning. Because for me, in the beginning, progression was never something I was emphasizing on. I was just kind of going to the gym and kind of getting a pump, and that's kind of where I started. A little different from what's out there now, but I feel like with starting strength and that type of a program where you're focusing on progression, and that's the main thing that you're watching, is so much better for a beginner, because that's the foundation of everything, and that's what's going to take you to the advanced level, learning how to progress in those movements. Aside from everything else, stop worrying about, like you said, weak points training and that type of stuff, because that's not going to get you anywhere. Focusing on progression right from the beginning, I feel like, is what's going to set you on the right path throughout your whole training course. So, whether it's starting strength, 5-3-1, whatever it is, those types of training programs are going to be the ones to be consistent throughout, that are going to give you those results to take you to advance, like I said. And you could ride those programs out for a long time too. I mean, you could ride out the one-time-a-week program, but you're not really going to learn progression doing it that way. Linear progression like that, it's always going to be longer to achieve those type of results. I mean, at least for me anyway, that's kind of where I feel like that would take someone from a beginner to an advanced. So in your guys' opinion, should a beginner begin with clean eating or flexible dieting? Go ahead, big guy.
Yeah, this is another interesting one, because obviously anybody who listens to this podcast know that we preach flexible dieting, and I think that it's definitely the optimal way to diet, whether it's fat loss, muscle gain, or just maintenance, and just people who don't even work out. Flexible dieting is something they should be doing. I think it's definitely the most optimal way for people to make progress, but for a beginner, again, this is something that there's a little bit of a gray area, because depending where they're coming from, if they know nothing on nutrition, which I didn't, I knew nothing when I first started training. I really got by with just the simple basics. I knew, someone told me, okay, you need to eat a lot of protein. How much protein do you eat? Well, you need to get about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. I think I was maybe like 150 pounds at the time, or whatever it was, 130. I focused on just getting 130 grams of protein in a day, 150, whatever it was, just training heavy and, eating somewhat clean. And I made great progress, Arguably, I could have made better progress if I focused on flexible dieting, but was it necessary at the time? Probably not. I just needed to get started. And, from there, then I learned about flexible dieting, took it up another level. But just in the beginning, even clean eating can definitely help somebody and might be all they need and maybe the best thing for them. Just knowing the basics, it's just like when you first start training, you don't need to know how to properly prioritize your training, your weak points, your volume, your frequency. You just know you need to get in the gym, you need to train heavy, you need to overload the muscle, you need to get stronger, you get bigger. Same thing with nutrition. Okay, I just need to get in calories to grow. I need to get in protein. If you kind of have those down, you're going to make great progress. Once you kind of get past the newbie stage, then you want to focus on flexible dieting. So I don't think there's anything wrong with starting off with flexible dieting, but I don't even think it's necessary, to be honest with you. Even though I think it's definitely the best way to go about dieting, it might not be necessary in the beginning.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, learning the basics on just proper nutrition, what foods are good, what foods are healthy, what foods contain this amount of protein, what foods contain this amount of carbohydrates. I think that that's important for a beginner to learn. Forget how many calories are in a Pop-Tart. You should be focusing on eating 80% of your food clean, quote unquote clean, healthy sources of food, foods that are filled with fiber, a lot of vitamins and minerals. You got to learn what those are before you practice flexible dieting. I think the principle of flexible dieting is important, and you have to learn that, figuring out at least how many calories you're taking in. I think that should be where a beginner should start, in my opinion. If I could start someone from, okay, I want to work out, okay, this is what I should do. You take you focus on just calories, just focus on counting calories, and focus on eating healthy foods for right now. That's what it's going to take for the beginner, and then you slowly start going from there and progressing from there. But that's definitely where I go. And it's interesting that you brought that up, Pete, with the whole clean eating versus flexible dieting to start out with, because we preach flexible dieting so much now, but we kind of forget that clean eating is where we both started from.
Right. Yeah, and I think that actually gives us a better understanding of how flexible dieting works. If you don't understand clean eating to begin with, then you don't understand how to actually manipulate the foods you want to eat into your diet to make the progress that you're trying to make. So people who aren't educated see flexible dieting and they just, you just eat Pop-Tarts and ice cream all day, and you claim to get in shape that way. But it's all about manipulating those foods, and you learn that through understanding, okay, how many calories are in this, and what protein sources these are and how that all fits into the equation.
So AJ, you said you had followed Matt Ogus for a while. So he was into flexible dieting. Did you start with flexible dieting, or did you start with like kind of clean eating, or how did it start for you?
I started with clean eating, so very similar to Pete in the way that I totally agree that you can make great progress with the clean eating approach. And I think, in all honesty, flexible dieting gets its bad rap from people who take its concept too early and try and introduce as much rubbish into their diet and posting it online and things like that. And that's where it gets its bad rap. It's people that don't have the concept.
He does that. If you follow Pete on Instagram, at Jack, JAKKED Fitness, he posts up his Quest bar and his Milky Way. Milky Way, right? Milky Way?
Yeah, the Milky Way bar, the dark chocolate one. But the funny thing about that is, it's again, I play into that just because a lot of people are also on the opposite end of the spectrum with the clean eating. So you have people doing the flexible dieting things, showing, okay, it's my Pop-Tarts and my cake and whatever I'm eating, my ice cream for dinner. And then you have the clean eating people saying, look, clean eating, I'm doing fish and tilapia.
Yeah.
So the bottom line with flexible dieting is that stuff doesn't matter. So it all comes down to actually understanding how to fit those foods in. So it's more of just a joke going back and forth the way I go about it. But people are serious about it. They post it, say, look, clean eating. People say, flexible dieting. It's like a debate that's just not going to get solved.
Go ahead, AJ. I want to hear your beginning.
Let's see. So going forward, obviously, I was introduced to flexible dieting by a coach that I had for the first year of contest that I did. I think that was the turning point for me in terms of getting an idea of nutritional value and knowing how to perform a fat loss phase with anyone. I think it really does open your eyes to the idea that fat loss is not some, mythical creature. It's literally the fact of a calorie deficit and, producing that over time. It made things a hell of a lot simpler for me. And I was able to relax my approach to nutrition. When I was clean eating, I think I would stress out if I hadn't eaten breakfast by a certain time, or I hadn't eaten meal 2 by 11 o'clock, and my life was sort of revolved around nutrition. That was sort of kind of not a great place to be. So I think as long as whatever approach you take in your first approach, as long as it doesn't affect your lifestyle too much and it's not a pain or it's not like sort of upsetting, then I think you should go ahead with that before you introduce yourself to flexible dieting. But again, just make sure you enjoy your first approach to however you schedule your nutrition.
All right, so we're going to throw out a case study here. So for a beginner who may just happen to type in, bodybuilding on iTunes and came across our podcast, a beginner who's interested in gaining muscle and getting leaner decides to start lifting weights and eating better. What approach would you take to begin his journey? So we'll let AJ take this one since he's the closest to a beginner. Go ahead, bud. So if a beginner came to you.
Okay, so they're looking just to gain muscle.
Yeah, gain muscle and get leaner.
Okay. So you'd have to demonstrate the idea that if they want to gain muscle and get leaner at the same time, they're going to struggle doing that. So they've got to get a goal in terms of, okay, so they want to gain size. Probably start them, on a very simple program, like we said, and look to progress. So start them logging their training from the get-go. not walking into sessions blind, making sure that they're trying to beat the previous session. That should be a priority in terms of starting, I think. Logging your sessions and making sure that you're progressing. And with regards to, obviously nutrition, making sure that you're in a constant surplus if you want to gain muscle. And for a newbie, I think that's the priority, just gain muscle. So constant surplus, and get an idea of where your calories should be at to gain weight, but not excessively.
Yeah, I agree. I think the approach I would give would be put someone on like a starting strength type program. I would let them log their calories. I would put them in a mass gaining first. Unless they were overweight, then I would probably reverse it a little bit. But I would probably have them diet down just to a reasonable body fat. I wouldn't get them like stage ready or anything like that.
No.
But let's just say they were a good body fat. I would start them on a mass gaining phase, counting only calories, focus on getting 80% of their food cleanly, putting them on a starting strength type program, and just watching them grow from there. What about you, Pete? That was pretty cut and dry from me, but
Yeah,
you're the long answered question, long-winded answered question.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a pretty simple answer, but what I would focus on with them is the first thing is just educating them on what foods that they should be fitting into the diet to make it more optimal for building muscle, and obviously protein is going to be significant in that. So the emphasis I would have on them is keeping calories high and keeping a certain amount of protein in, which is going to depend on the person, but just focusing on hitting a certain number, like 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, just as a general rule of thumb. And just doing that combined with, a decent weight training program that obviously has some type of structure to it for progression, they're definitely going to see results in the beginning because it doesn't really take much. So just focusing on that and having that protein intake high enough where you can build some muscle, that's going to help them build muscle, and it's going to help them burn fat because, adding extra muscle is going to speed up the metabolism. They're probably going to lean out a little bit whether they're in a surplus or not at that point. And that's just the place that you'd get them started. And from there, I would increase the calories if they want to bulk up.
Perfect, man. I think that was a great way to end this podcast. So, man, I wish I was a beginner in 2016 because we'd probably be 3 times the size we are now.
I know. I wish I could start all over again.
All right, AJ, where can the listeners find out more about you? Because I think, 19 years old, you got a lot of, long ways to go in the sport, and you're already pretty ahead of most people. So where can people find out more about you?
Okay, thank you. So I am quite active on Instagram. You can follow me at AJMorris_. Also, I have obviously my Facebook page. If people add me on my personal page, that's fine. I can accept. So my name's AJ Morris on Facebook. And then I also have my business page, which is Made by Morris on Facebook. Don't have a website yet, but I have a business page on Facebook. So guys can hit me up on there. If any of you guys or girls have a question about starting or how I started, or anything regarding macros and training, just shoot me a message on any of those platforms.
All right, guys. It was a great episode, and hopefully there'll be a beginner who listens to this and say, you know what, I'm going to listen to those guys. I think they know what they're talking about. But Pete, it's your time, bud.
All right, guys. It's Pete and Anthony with AJ Morris, New York Muscle Radio, and we're out.
Enjoyed this episode of New York Muscle Radio? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, New York Muscle Radio.